I'm pleased to welcome committee members and guests to the Committee on Student Affairs and Special Programs. Everyone should have some form of electronic device, iPad, laptop, to access the agenda and other supporting documents for the meeting. There are copies up here of the agenda and supporting documents on the table if you don't have paperless access at this time. This evening, we have 2 action items and 1 information item, and we will have 1 student disciplinary appeal when we go into executive session before the committee. Our first action item is approval of our meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of January 4th, 2016?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We're gonna go a little bit out of order, if that's okay, just not to keep a lot of folks waiting to have to come back after executive session. So we're gonna move to page 2 of the agenda, item number B, approval of the incorporation of College Association at Queens College. Vice Chancellor Sanchez will now provide an overview of the revisions. Vice Chancellor?
Thank you, Chairperson Robles Roman. Just a quick explanation. Queens College is restructuring its college association from an unincorporated association to a corporation. In accordance with bylaw section 16.5, the bylaws and certificate of incorporation of the college association have been approved by the Queens College president and reviewed by the University Office of the General Counsel. The name of the college association is the Queens College Association, Inc. The association will be responsible for administering the student activity fee and such other appropriate activities as may be approved by its governing board. The association's governing board will be composed of the Queens College president or his or her designee as chair, 6 students, 2 administrators, 2 faculty members, and 2 non-CUNY independent directors as defined by section 10221 of the New York Non-for-Profit Corporation Law, or as otherwise required by the board bylaws. I know Vice President Dr. Adam Rockman, Vice President of Student Affairs from Queens College, is here and is available to answer any questions from the members. Would you like to join us up here? Any questions?
Good afternoon. Donovan Burrington, student at John Jay. My question would be, were any students involved from Queens College in the process of this change?
Absolutely, yeah. The current members of the board were actually, I can say it was not a unanimous board. Several people were absent, but every one of the student members was there and voted unanimously for this.
Okay. If I may follow up. So did your current board take a vote on this, and is there any minutes to reflect?
Yes, that's all is all reflected. Well, I mean, I don't think we have the minutes here, but it's all reflected in the minutes of the board that the resolution was presented to the board and they voted on it, and again, it was a unanimous decision to incorporate.
Any other questions?
I would just ask if we can have that as a matter of record.
Talking really loud. Am I the only one who? Yeah, you may want to just tell folks that the meeting's in progress. I'm sorry, because I'm having.
It's okay, no problem.
Stage.
If we can just have the minutes that the board, from the vote that the board took, just to reflect that, because the college association involves the student activity fee, and I think it's important to know that the students on that campus was involved in this decision-making process.
Absolutely.
I'm also noting that the faculty arrangements are they're in congruence to what we discussed last semester,
Yes.
last year rather, when Manfred Phillip was representing the UFS. That is to say that you have a shared governance body that's sending these faculty representatives to the president.
Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Vice Chancellor, you have one information item on the agenda, is that correct?
Yes, just to report out a couple of items. As many of you know, the state budget came out this past week, and while there's still, I think, we're all hoping for maybe a few more resources to work on our faculty contract. There were a number of areas.
Good luck.
Yes, there were a number of areas. However, that directly impact student affairs that came out in the plus item. One, a significant increase is within our SEEK programs, about a 20% increase, $4.4 million
Congratulations.
to expand our SEEK programs. We also saw a full reestablishing of our resources for child care centers. They replenished the $900,000. We saw a slight increase for college discovery, about $250,000. And then we saw a continued commitment to support our foster care youth. As some of you recall, for the first time, the governor gave about $1.5 million to CUNY and SUNY this year. I believe they doubled that to $3 million. So we'll continue to expand our services and support here at CUNY for our youth in care. I do want to say, before getting to the rest of my report, I want to thank certainly the student communities and our staff, Kevin Tucker and Chris Rosa, working with Malabe leadership, taking about 20 students up on several weekends to do lobbying, and certainly University Student Senate and your leadership in advocating for these important student services. So I want to recognize them for their ongoing work with it. On February 26th, I had the opportunity, along with our Associate Dean Cheryl Williams and our Black Male Initiative University Director Jermaine Wright, to present and to testify at the New York City Council on the status of the Black Male Initiative and Black academic offerings at CUNY colleges. We also, this past month, convened, the Central Office of Student Affairs convened a working group to look at a math waiver policy. And the working group were representatives of Academic Affairs, the General Counsel's Office, the Academic Senate, as well as our directors that work with our students with disabilities. And what we're looking at is we want to develop a math waiver policy and protocol for the university. 3 years ago, CUNY shifted the responsibility for considering waivers of the math graduation requirement as a student disability accommodations from the central office to the colleges. And some colleges aren't aware of this new obligation, and frankly, there's little consistency in the method by which waiver requests are evaluated across the colleges. And there's no way to code math waivers for enrollment management purposes. So the working group will develop policy and address these gaps, and I think we have all the key players to make this happen. And this is really intended to address those students that have disabilities like dyscalculia and other disabilities, really struggle with some of the math requirements, providing alternatives for them so that they can advance towards their degree. I'm also very pleased to announce.
Can I ask what
Sure.
that's such important work, just for my own edification, what's the timeline for the completion of the committee's work?
Well, we didn't really set a timeline. My goal, or the goal, will be to try to get this done before fall, so that we can begin to advise and support students this next semester.
Because I would venture to say that it's such a worthwhile goal, number one, and number two, from a legal perspective, you know, you also don't want to be challenged if it predominantly affects students with disabilities. You don't want to be in a position to have schools that are out of code or
Right.
potentially.
It's absolutely.
So I would suggest, you know, figuring out a timeline and a set date of completion.
It'd be my hope we could get this finished by midsummer so that we have plenty of time to get it distributed and train folks for this fall.
Perfect.
I'm also happy to announce that CUNY has been named the first and only university system in America to be named military-friendly in recognition of its programs for veterans, members of the armed forces leaving military service, and their military spouses. The designation by Victory Media was given to 18 CUNY schools. And I'm excited. There's been great progress, a lot of work happening at each of our colleges with our veteran affairs directors. They moved from having 7 colleges to 17 colleges in 12 months. And just to give you some context, the application for this is a little over 30 pages to become military friendly. And the reason why we're pushing for this designation, it's nice to be called military friendly, but more importantly,
Gotta be.
it allows us, we have to be, but it allows us to stay in compliance with the Department of Defense MOU that all higher education institutions are accountable for, to making sure we're providing the necessary services and support for our veteran students. So it kind of hits 2 birds with 1 stone. We're in compliance with the Department of Defense, and we're being recognized as being military friendly. Let me see what else I have here. We're making great progress, as I mentioned earlier, on our work with foster youth. Our Youth Matters program, and this was created over the past year with the funding by the governor this past year, is working with our foster care students who are in our SEEK programs. We've identified 66 students and have brought on 4 social work interns on board to serve as youth advocates, and they'll be trained to screen for single-stop benefits. Shirley DePena is establishing relationships with the Administration for Children's Services and foster care agencies as part of our broader initiative, the CUNY Foster Care Collaborative, where we have the Children's Aid Society, Lawyers for Children, New Yorkers for Children, and the Administration for Children's Services coming together to provide services and support for not just these students in this particular program, but all of our youth in care across CUNY. Over the last several weeks, we've had a number of food pantry openings, one at Brooklyn College and one at CSI. As I think I've reported it with this body, our goal over the next 18 months is to triple the number of meals and pounds of food given to our students and their families. And I think we're well on our way. I think we'll, by the end of this spring, hopefully have 10 combined food pantries at our colleges. Along the lines of mental health and wellness, our new university director of mental health and wellness, Ryan Kemmerer, is currently working with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the CUNY School of Public Health on the Mayor's Thrive NYC new initiative, the Roadmap to Mental Health. This project aims to increase access to and resources around mental health and wellness services, both on and off campus, for our CUNY students. In its preliminary stages, the initiative is making quality mental health and self-care resources available to students via web and mobile-based technologies and peer-supported programming to improve access to mental health treatment services, enhance student mental health and wellness, and increase the overall graduation rate. There's several components tied to this initiative, which we've received now city funding for. One is a CUNY Mental Health Ambassadors Initiative. And working with the School of Public Health, we've already, over the last 18 months, we had already started to establish this work with Dean Elmohandes. This funding will allow us to expand and to grow the number of mental health ambassadors who educate and provide awareness to our students on these issues. Another component is online social support services, which is going to be 24-hour a day and professional guidance for better mental health. Third area is the Healthy CUNY app, and this is where we're going to identify companies that provide mobile mental health services to students. This is new technology that literally is emerging all over the world, and we're going to identify 2 to 3 companies doing this and tie them to this app so that students can pick and choose which technology meets their needs the best. And this will be a two-year pilot. The initiative is currently...
Is there anything in the initiative that calls for sort of enhancing the counselor premise at CUNY proper? Or is it all meant to look for the resources that are outside of CUNY for the students?
It's actually intended to support and I think complement what's happening at our counseling centers. What we are hearing from our counseling centers is that they don't have enough staff. The need and particularly serious issues around counseling and mental health are growing. There's increases in those, and you see this nationally. And so there's longer wait lists, and we think this can provide greater support for those students who are currently receiving counseling at our counseling centers. But I think maybe even more importantly, those students who want to get counseling but won't ever go to a counseling center. And so this is proactively provides, again, greater access to these students. But we see this as a complementary set of resources to our counseling centers.
You know, since the dean is new and I have not met him, I'm wondering if we should create an opportunity for him to meet the members of our committee at our next meeting and to flesh this out further. Several years back, Executive Vice Chancellor Dobrin undertook a similar analysis, and I don't know how he did it, but he came back with some incredible resources. But before he did that, there was sort of a year's worth of analysis. I think this may have predated your tenure.
Okay.
So he should probably know what work was done, and the conclusion that we found, which is, you already said, that there is unevenness in a lot of the universities in terms of being able to even keep up with the demand
Right.
of the mental health need. And my personal opinion is all the apps in the world aren't gonna address that fundamental problem and issue. It would be important to make sure that they know what the baseline is before, you know, you start putting other.
We absolutely could invite Dean Ayman El-Mohandes into a future meeting to meet the council. A couple other very quick items. We held an Emerging Leaders Conference at Brooklyn College this past month, Pathways to Discovery, Finding the Leader Within. We had about 80 different student leaders that participated in a variety of workshops and activities. Mr. Sean Dubb was the keynote speaker. Ongoing training continues to happen with our within housing staff. We recently provided training for all of our RAs, resident assistants, and housing staff around mental health and wellness and Title IX, as well as training on mental health with our student conduct officers. We also continue to do conduct site visits at a number of our colleges within different functional units like international affairs and housing to make sure they're using the best and the latest practices and making sure they're addressing any kind of compliance issues that might be out there. And then lastly, a couple of neat awards. Our national association, the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, NASPA, recognized two of our staff members. In fact, the president of the year was Gail Mello from LaGuardia Community College. She was recognized at our national conference in Indianapolis just 2 weeks ago. And then David Jones received the African American Knowledge Community NASPA Mid-Level Professional Award at the national level, and he's in our staff and works with our housing and judicial affairs areas. And that concludes my report.
A lot of great news, thank you. Any questions or comments for the Vice Chancellor's report?
Great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Lots of good news there. So at this time, we will go into executive session to consider a student disciplinary appeal. May I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will now go into executive session. And so now, because